Hey there. So I got part 5 of the Shadows of the Galaxy review. We got only 18 new cards this time, so it should be a little shorter than the last few videos. As always, it's going to be focused more on competitive, like Premier, so constructed viability, and like any thoughts I have about how to get these cards into some competitive decks. So let's start with Legendary. It's Finalizer, the new biggest card in the game. It's an 11 cost 11/11 with Overwhelm, and it has a when played to choose any number of friendly units, and each of those units will then capture a non-leader unit in the same arena. So, okay, first of all, 11 cost. Already, we need to have like some red flags on this because it may be just impossible to ever play it. It's a new target potentially for Galactic Ambition, although is it really better than Devastator in those cases? Sometimes, right? If you have a bunch of units in play, it's basically like a one-sided board wipe. Each of your units will capture one of their units. You put your worst unit, their worst unit on the finalizer, right? Because their first priority is going to get remove the 11/11 off the board, and you don't want them getting back a powerful unit. So you'll probably want to put their best units on some other stuff that you have. Potentially just like win the game that way, right? Because now they're going to have no board. I just mostly don't see like situations in games right now where you're playing like a green ramp deck that just has a bunch of units in play to like capture their bunch of units, right? Boards don't get usually gummed up that way. So it seems like this effect, although very powerful, is extremely situational, and maybe too situational for how much this costs and how like simpler it is to just, play a Devastator that kills their best ground unit and completely blocks the entire space arena because it has Sentinel. That can also defeat leaders. So it's another tool. I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up in like some sideboards. Like a lot of these capital ships, that's where they end up for like really grindy control matchups. And this is another option for those decks. I don't think there's like no chance it ever sees any play. I'm just not yet sure that it's like better than the other big ship options. All right, here's a cool one, Palpatine's Return. It's a 6 cost in villain green. It says play a unit from your discard pile. It'll cost 6 less, and if it's a force unit, it costs 8 less. So there's a few force units which this will discount. Notably, there's Vader, there's Dooku, and the most on the nose here is Palpatine, right? That Palpatine costs 8, so that's where you get the biggest discount. It goes from 8 to 6 when you bring it back from the dead with this card. So there's two things you kind of play this for. One is just have extra copies in your deck for those cards when they inevitably die. That's okay. I think like you want to play 6 Vaders in your deck, sure. You throw some of these in there, you'll usually just be able to bring one back. And the other more like busted thing you do with this is to cheat like a Palpatine out, right? On turn 4 or turn 5, you just try to get it out early. How do you do that? You have to somehow discard your Palpatine. At the moment of me reviewing this card, there is only one card that does that in the game. That would be Force Throw, unless your opponent is making you discard those cards or you're like self-targeting yourself with weird cards. But Force Throw does it. But we're also about to review another leader that has a built-in self-discard mechanic. So theoretically, that would be like a place to play like a combo deck, right? You're just trying to get a 6-cost Palpatine. I think 6-cost Palpatine is nuts. I think it benefits incredibly from coming out very early because it's kind of playing Overwhelming Barrage on itself. You're getting spotted a 6/6 Overwhelming Barrage. It's a much more powerful card when it's done on like turn 4 or 5 and like completely decimates that early to mid game that your opponent was playing. Whereas like playing Palpatine on 8, well, sometimes that just kills like one big unit, which is still good, but I think Palpatine hasn't always been super impactful at 8 because of how much it costs and the fact that it's only leaving behind a 6/6. You get that out 2 turns early though, you are going to flip some boards. So I think the most interesting thing to do here is to maybe try to play it in some kind of self-discard combo deck where your main goal is to either like cheat out Vaders, cheat out Palpatines. Maybe we'll get some other Force units that this can help cheat out. It does also, like, you know, make you not need to pay aspect tax if you wanted to cheat out something like a Luke Skywalker, right? You're getting the 2 discount, but you're also paying the 2 tax. I don't think that's actually any good, but you could do that. Yeah, other than that, I think it's a really solid card. I think it'll potentially make even non, like, self-discard decks just to, like, be redundant copies of Vader's, and we'll see what else we can do with this. All right, Gray Squadron Y-Wing is a 2 cost. It's just a heroic card. It's a 1/3. It does have the Rebel tag, which is very relevant. And then on attack, the opponent chooses to either take 2 damage or to deal 2 damage to a unit they control. I don't particularly love cards that give your opponent this much agency. This is kind of like a A-Wing, right? It can do 3 to their base, or it can do 3 to a unit. The opponent just chooses which of those. As such, I really don't think it's very good. Like, maybe if we're just like pure space, pure aggro, we play this just to have more redundant Rebel space units. I just worry that, like, all right, they'll just take 1, deal 2 to something that doesn't matter, and you're playing a 2 cost that is dealing 1 damage over and over again. It doesn't defend well either. Yeah, I tend to steer away from cards like this until I, like, see for sure that they're, like, extremely powerful. I do not think this is very powerful. I do not think this will see very much play. All right, so we talked about the leader a second ago with Palpatine's Return, but this is Kylo Ren, another 4-cost deployed leader. It has a front side action of exhaust, discard a card from your hand, give a unit +2/+0 for this phase. So that's where that self-discard comes from if you wanted to pair this with, like, the green for the Palpatine's Return. Other than that, it's the deploy side. It is a force unit. It is a 5/4 that loses 1 power for each card in your hand. So we see where self-discarding, getting this out early, it can hit for a lot. So yeah, there's 2 angles for this. One is, like, the combo discard stuff, which so far we're really seeing it with Palpatine's Return. There's a card I'm about to preview that, like, his TIE Fighter, which has self-discard synergy, and a few others. And the other would just be, like, a hardcore aggro, which is maybe more likely to be where this fits. Turning your cards into 0-cost deal 2s is pretty strong, right? That's what the front ability does. Obviously, there's a delay on it, so if they interact with the unit, you're basically discarding a card and not getting any benefit from it. But early in the game, especially with yellow cards right now, there's a lot of shielded units in yellow. You can likely get that benefit. You try to get Kylo out. You try to hit for, like, 4 or 5 on the first turn. They can't remove him immediately. Maybe he gets 2 attacks in. Something like that is what we wanted IG to do, right? But IG coming out a turn later made it incredibly unlikely that he ever got 2 attacks in, and sometimes it was hard for him to even get 1 attack in. I think it's going to be very much more likely that Kylo is going to actually hit your opponent. Other things you can do here, it is a force card, a very cheap, the cheapest leader deploy force now, cheaper than Chirrut, which means that you can get, like, very early force synergy stuff out, like force throw, force lightning. But mostly I see 2 angles. Hardcore aggro, like the weeniest of aggro. You play a bunch of 1-drops, 2-drops. You try to dump your hand very quickly, hit face a lot, play a bunch of smuggle cards so that, like, you get pseudo cards from there. And then the other option, the Palpatine's Return stuff, trying to enable that very easily. Yeah, I think this looks really interesting. It looks like an exciting build around. And just we're going to wait for some more cards that directly synergize with his ability. There's going to be 2 in this review, so we'll see if we'll get more. And here's that first. It's another legendary. It's Kylo's TIE Silencer. It's a 2-cost 3/2 space unit in villain red. All right, before I even read the text, that's already good. That already goes everywhere. Like, 3 power in space. This is the first unit that does that at 2 cost. A-Wing was the previous one that kind of did it, right? It did it on attack, not on defense. This card is good as an aggro card, dealing 3. It's also good as a defense card because it now kills all the aggro cards, right? This kills A-Wing, doesn't die. It's like the first card that can do that for a control deck, for instance. on the same turn, right? The issue has always been that there's nothing on turn 1 that you could play in front of an A-Wing that doesn't immediately die to that A-Wing, or that it immediately kills that A-Wing unless it's your own A-Wing. Well, this does it. It trades with all the 2/3 space units. And yeah, so both sides of the equation are going to play this card with or without the text on it. It's just going to be core. This is going to be likely a very expensive legendary. I can't imagine it's not going to be a 3 of and basically any red villain deck right now. Okay, now the text. Action. If this unit was discarded from your hand or deck this phase, play it from your discard pile, paying its cost. All right, so Kylo can toss this into its own discard pile, buff a unit, play it from his discard pile, so essentially he didn't have to pay the discard cost for the buff. It's pure upside, right? That's basically it. It's just like a minor upside to this card. It synergizes with Kylo. It like synergizes randomly with like, oh, your opponent chose Cunning to like make you randomly discard a card. This like randomly ended up in your discard pile. Your opponent is most likely never going to make you discard this on purpose. But yeah, specifically it's for the Kylo synergy, which makes sense. It is Kylo's little ship. And that's a really powerful ability, right? Because Kylo's issue is going to be card advantage, and if he's going to get a few cards that he can immediately buy back without having to, you know, like spend resources on, then he's going to get buffed up. And this is a good card without that text. It's a good card with the text. It's just a really good card. All right, Rickety Quad Jumper. Won't spend too much time here. It's a 2-cost blue. It's a 1/3 space. On attack, you may reveal the top card of your deck. If it is not a unit, give experience token to another unit. We're not playing this. It's gonna, like, I can't imagine it's hitting more than like 40% of the time, even if your deck is filled with upgrades and events. And it's a 2-cost 1/3 space unit. It needs to get 1 hit to even like be parity. So it's gonna need to get like a multiple attacks and multiple successful hits for this to ever be good. I don't see any relevant traits. Yeah, it doesn't seem very good. All right, a new adventure. The first double aspect card we've seen in this set, which means, hey, we're getting some. It is a double yellow. It costs 2. It returns a non-leader unit that costs 6 or less to its owner's hand, and then its owner may play it for free. So in other games, this is called like a flicker effect. It basically like bounces and replays the unit. So you get all the activations for that unit, like all the when played effects. You get to like clean up the damage off of it. And because all units come into play exhausted, it will also exhaust. So this is pretty cool. Like right now in double yellow, right? You can like bounce back your Cantina Bouncer, and then it just comes back into play and you bounce one of their units. So you basically play 2-cost Waylay, right? You did exhaust your own Cantina Bouncer, so probably want to attack with that first. You could do the same with Bodhi Rook. Then you basically played a 2-cost Spark of Rebellion. You played like Spark of Rebellion that can't hit units. Solid, right? Remember, it also cleans up all the damage on these units. There's going to be like a lot of when played stuff that this will be good with. Those are like, Fire Spray, right? If that's Fire Spray, it can attack. You bounce it, it comes into play ready. It can attack again, so it's like a 2-cost deal 5 theoretically. Those 3 are like the major ones in the current like Boba yellow deck that I think this will be good with. There's also like downside, like the floor here is like, it's kind of like Bamboozle, right? You use it on one of your opponent's units, it exhausts it and deletes all the upgrades from it, right? Because whenever a unit leaves play, all the upgrades go with it. So it does clean up that. Since they are playing it, since the unit is getting played again, you can't really do that against Lieutenant Charlton because they can reveal cards again to like put the experience back on him. But yeah, like the main goal of this is obviously not to like exhaust a unit the opponent controls for 2, but it is just like a backup case. The effect is very strong. Where you need to consider there just are a lot of events. There are a lot of situational events and a lot of situational units in this like double yellow package. And our deck can't be full of situational effects and situational units. So it's just going to be like a matter of figuring out how to construct the deck and whether or not this ends up making the cut, because this doesn't do anything on its own, and you can't have too many cards that don't do anything on their own. Can't have your entire deck be like synergy that requires another unit in play, because it won't always work out. And this effect, although very strong, is usually something you don't want to do like immediately off the top of the turn, because you will be exhausting your own units if you just like bounce them with this. So you want to get your attacks in, and then you're leaving them susceptible to getting removed, and then you've got this like dead card in your hand. All in all, I think this will likely see some play. It's just going to be a matter of like, how do we construct the deck with this, and can we get like more good enablers for it, more when played effects that are strong. All right, Concord Dawn Interceptors is a 3-cost 1/4 Sentinel space unit in Hero Blue. When it defends, it gets +2/+0. This card's really annoying, I think. We play System Patrol Craft sometimes in like blue decks. It's a 3/4 Sentinel. This is a 3/4 Sentinel, right? On defense, it's a 3/4 Sentinel. It just costs 1 less, which means it's way more effective. I think the card is very good. It obviously is not very good at attacking. It's not its main role. I think the fact that it has 1 power is also very relevant for another leader we're about to reveal. All in all, I think as far as a defensive blue unit, this is quite powerful, and I would be very excited to like try this in like a grindy, controlling mid-range shell for blue. Just stall, right? Blue's already pretty good at that. This makes them even better. And yeah, I think don't sleep on this one. 4 health is very annoying at 3 cost. It basically brick walls every good space unit that gets played in that early stages of the game. Everything that has 3 and 2 power, and it like often takes them down with it. All right, Kira is a 4-cost hero yellow. It's a 3/5 with the Underworld trait. Underworld can be relevant right now because of McClunky, although she is 4. She has a when played, look at the opponent's hand, then name a card. While this is in play, each card with the name costs 3 or more. So yeah, it's like, it's not discard, but it's sort of, right? Like the card you pick is going to cost 3 more. It's basically like it's a dead card in their hand until they remove her. And that's the thing, right? She's well statted enough that it's not going to be easy to just like delete her to unlock that card. And then your opponent kind of has to decide, well, how badly do I want this card? Do I want to spend resources now attacking or using events to kill Kira so I can unlock this card? Do I just like, you know, say forget it, she's good, I'll resource that card? Yeah, like it's not pure card advantage because they can just resource it, right? It's not gonna like sit in their hand. They're not just gonna like keep it in their hand and be like, wait, I can't play this card for the whole game. They'll either resource it or kill her. But her stats are pretty good. It's nice disruption. I think it works well in like a continued package with disruption. This color already plays Spark of Rebellion. If you pair it with red cards and other discard effects, like you can trim their hand and then like make them have to make really difficult choices because this sits in play, maybe like blocking a really important card. And when they have less cards to choose from, this effect becomes more powerful. I think it's pretty good. Wouldn't be shocked if this gets some play in yellow decks. There's just a lot of disruption in that color, and this adds another piece to that. All right, Slaver's Freighter is a villain yellow card. It's a 4/5 Underworld. When played, you may ready another unit, so it can't target itself, another unit with power equal to or less than the number of upgrades on enemy units. Your opponent, if like your opponent has a bunch of upgrades, I guess this comes in and like readies one of your own units. Like, but we're talking like a bunch of upgrades. Like if they have 2, you can ready a 2 power unit. It's not like, I don't think this card's very good. Even like when it hits, right? Even if they have 5 upgrades in play, you like ready something. Maybe in like that one situation, you were able to like get an attack off with a big unit. Then they upgraded a bunch of things, and then you like ready that big unit. This seems way too situational. The floor is way too low. Not a fan. All right, Given to Your Anger is a 1-cost red villain card. It deals 1 damage to an enemy unit. Its controller's next action this phase must be an attack action with that unit if able, and it must attack a unit if able. It's a mouthful. Basically, you hit a unit, that unit now has to attack you, and if you have a unit in play, that unit has to attack one of your units. It's like a lot of ifs and a lot of situational stuff. The floor here is that it's a 1-cost ping. One cost that deals 1 damage, which can be combined with things like Tarkin Town to just like remove something. It does trigger like Vader's ability, so you can like ping with this and another resource. There's like a high upside here where like you have 1 unit in play that is strong that they don't want to attack into. They have like a really key unit that they like want to go face with or something, or that it needs to stay in play. You like use this on it. That unit, like they're locked into their next action being an attack with that unit into the unit that you have. It like makes it suicide theoretically. I mean, but you could have also just attacked that unit with your unit. So like, why did you need to play this? I see it as like if they're playing against an aggro deck and they have a bunch of units in play, and like what if you had to trade one of your lead with attacking with one of your units into one of theirs, then they get to attack your base with their other one. With this, you get to like force the first unit to attack into your unit, and then your unit can kill the other unit, and then like you didn't take any base damage. So that's like where this is like nifty. I just like honestly think there's just like way too many situations where this card does absolutely nothing. I think mostly if I was playing this, I'm playing it because of the ping. I want to play it with like Tarkin Town, maybe like ISB agent, things like that, where like these stacking 1 damage effects might be relevant. But yeah, I think the card's pretty cool, and like I could see like some major blowout potential, but there is a very low floor too. All right, Nima Outpost Constable is a 4-cost 2/6 Sentinel. I mean, 6 is a lot. I think it's the biggest Sentinel we have on 4 costs right now as far as health is concerned, but without any relevant traits and it's low power, it's probably too cute to see competitive play. All right, another leader, Rey. So she is a 6-cost deploy. She has an action that costs 1, give an experience token to a unit with 2 or less power. So that's like a Tarkin-esque ability, except with a different requirement, right? 2 or less instead of Imperial. Her 6-cost deploy is 2/6, so that she does start off fairly small. She does have the Force trait. She does have Restore 3, which is massive. And an on attack, which gives her the same ability. You may give an experience token to a unit 2 or less power, so she can immediately give herself an experience and become a 3/7. So I know like this looks kind of weak. Just like the unit, it's 6, it's a 2/6. It's like the ability itself is like a very conditional Tarkin ability. Like, what are we doing here? I actually think this is pretty good. There's a lot of blue units that benefit tremendously from experience, like low-cost blue units. We can start with the Concord ship that we just talked about, the 1/4 Sentinel. There's Yoda. There's R2-D2. There's like the new Mandalorian, the Follower of the Way, the 1/3 that gets like an extra buff whenever it's upgraded. And I know I'm forgetting some. Oh, there's Queel, the 2/3 Restore that draws a card whenever it attacks, right? There is a lot of units that we would be playing if they costed 1 more and would come in with an experience with like a +1/+1, right? You would pay a 2-cost 2/5 R2-D2, right? You would pay a 4-cost 3/5 Yoda, potentially, right? You would play like the Follower of the Way. You would pay a 3-cost 3/5, right? That's something I think you would play. The Concord ship, right? A 2/5 Sentinel ship that gets +2 when it's defending. And the nice part here is that you get to like break up this ability gets to be broken up. Like you don't have to pay up front. You can squeeze this in to turns. I think there's a lot of potential with this ability. I think it's pretty powerful. I think when you compare it to Tarkin, the issue Tarkin has is a lot of its units just like aren't as good as the hero units with low power. Like the hero blue package has a lot of good cheap units with a lot of health, and that's like where these experience tokens become really powerful. They make fighting clunky, right? Like R2, it goes to 2/5. You can actually still buff it again into a 3/6. You can like start throwing shields on units with vigilance, and like you can play the security complex. Like I've seen this deck, my buddy played it like a mono blue, just like testing. It's like she seemed really strong to me. What I'd like to see more of is potentially like force synergy stuff for her in a blue shell. There's not that much yet. But yeah, like just to top it off, like her restore 3. So like, yeah, she's very weak, but it's unlikely in a deck like this that you're just like deploying her without anything surrounding her. I don't think you're too much at risk if you're building this shell correctly for her to get like deployed and instantly die. That I think like the amount of healing that this deck can put out, or like a deck built around her and like a mono blue package, is going to be like tremendous. You're going to stall out games. My one issue would be is like, how do you deal with like control decks? Because can you go over the top with them with this package where the heal is less effective? Well, potentially, because again, you're just like buffing units all day. Don't sleep on this. I think it's more powerful than it probably looks. Just like the numbers on the card don't seem very good, but I think there's going to be potential here to make something pretty annoying. All right, another legendary today. So we're starting to get a bunch of legendaries. This is Poe Dameron. It's a 6/6 for 5 in red hero. On attack, discard up to 3 cards from your hand. For each card discarded this way, choose a different option, and the options are to deal 2 to a unit or base, to defeat an upgrade, or to have an opponent discard a card. So you can't do the same option multiple times, and it is an attack trigger, not a on play trigger, which is how I read it the first time. But okay, I know I typically say like 5 cost, you need immediate value, like you need an immediate effect at 5. It's kind of been my break point. But this guy is enormous. It is 6/6. It is not like other 5/5s in that it like for 5. So there's been a lot. It's been my major complaint about 5 cost units is that they don't do anything when they come into play, and most of them just like their stats aren't good enough. His stats are good enough. Okay, so this is something I think I would want to play, and just be like, all right, it's gonna live to attack next turn most of the time. I'm not too worried about that. It hits like a truck. The ability is strong. My favorite part about this is the discard, because like in this color, especially if you pair it with yellow as well, you can definitely play like a discard package that just like really taxes your opponent's hand. The fact that it can also attack, deal 2 to something, potentially killing something with one of the cards, then you pitch a card, make them discard. Like you're just like playing like a resource mitigation deck. You're both going to be top decking, but you're building your deck around that. And you know what follows this up? Black one potentially. It also has the resistance tag, so it kind of makes sense to me, right? You play this, you attack with it, you like discard a bunch of cards, you make your opponent discard cards, and then bam, you refill your hand. I think black one pairs very well with this. I think so does Wrecker, which is another just like massive unit that comes into play the turn after this. All in all, this is pretty impressive. Of course, we can mention that it works really well with Energy Conversion Lab as well. It can ambush with this and then immediately get the effect. And, you know, I think it works really well with Han, because coming at a turn early, this guy's absolutely a beating, right? Not much that is handling this on turn 3. And that's kind of the first shell I would probably try, is this with a Han deck currently. And then I'd probably try it with green with an Energy Conversion Lab deck and play like a mid-range style build. I think this is a good card, and we'll probably see play. All right, Adelphi Patrol Wing is a green hero card. It costs 5. It's a 4/6. When played, you may attack with a unit. If you have the initiative, it gets +2/+0 for the attack. So this is like a big Fleet Lieutenant. But like, you know, Fleet Lieutenant buffs a rebel. This buffs if you have initiative. I think the effect's pretty strong, like mostly, especially when you have initiative. It's just that I prefer this effect on cheaper units. I think like the action sheet works well early in the game. If you're playing 5 to just like play a 4/6 clunker and getting value off of this, that can be good. It's just going to be situational. I'm not sure this is quite like at the level of constructed playability, but I think it's going to make for a pretty strong draft card. All right. Bazine Natal is a 2-cost yellow villain unit. It also has Underworld. It's a 1/3. When played, look at the opponent's hand. You may discard one of those cards. If you do, that player draws a card. Smuggle for 4. Card's good, okay? You get to peek, you get to rip out the most devastating card in their hand. They do get to refill, so it's not like it's card advantage in that sense. It leaves behind a little body. Smuggle is always upside. Underworld is upside. But again, I talked about this with a new adventure, the Double Cunning card. There's just a lot of situational effects. And this is another one, right? Because yellow villain's main game plan is aggressiveness. It's aggressiveness and disruption, right? And like how much of each you want, that's going to be the puzzle. Because this card, it doesn't provide any aggression. It's not like, oh, you play this on turn one and like do something annoying to them, but like, okay, you've now hit them for one, right? Like you're not accomplishing much in the sense of finishing the game off. This is much more of a disruptive tool. It's really nice that it has Smuggle. I think it's incredibly important for a card like this. And I think where you'd want to play it is like kind of on bridge turns, like the 5 resource turn. You like play this before you maybe deploy a leader and try to get value that way. Same way sometimes Bodhi does, except Bodhi, the interesting part, Bodhi is that it hits for 3, right? Which is kind of the rate you're expecting at that cost, right? Like the Boba unit costs 3 and hits for 3, right? So he's aggroing just as much, but he's also immediately giving you card disruption. Whereas here, of course, it can hit any card, but they're not getting you're not getting like card quantity. Like they still get to redraw. I think the card's good. I want to play a disruptive yellow deck. I think that deck is going to be good. It just has so many tools that we're going to have to figure out how much of each, like half of the deck do we want? How much aggression? How much disruption? Can we fit a card like this? Can we also fit a new adventure, right? Like how much of this package of like disruption that doesn't like further our own game plan, that just stops our opponent's game plan? Because that's what this does. It is not furthering our own game plan. It is not providing us power boost. It is just disruption. And we can't have our whole deck just be disruption, because eventually it's not going to be enough. It's all temporary. A lot of it is not providing us any card advantage, like this Cantina Bouncer, Waylay, like all these cards. They're not card advantage. They're just tempo. This isn't even really tempo. It's just disruption. But yeah, like the card's powerful. It has Smuggle, so it's kind of a free roll. It's probably going to see play. All right, Coruscant Dissident is a 3-cost 3/4 in hero, yellow. It also has Underworld. It has an on attack, you may ready a resource. I think the card's fine. Like, it's got decent stats. It's got Ezra stats. The abilities, I think, just a little clunky because, of course, you have to play your resources before you can ready them, which means you're not attacking with this immediately. Like something like Ezra, if you get to ready, you're like, yes, I'm so happy. I immediately jam with Ezra. I immediately get to look at the top card of my deck and decide if I want to do something with this. With here, if you want to get any value off of this, you have to play something first, which leaves this susceptible to getting disrupted or not having a good attack anymore. All in all, like the stats are good enough. It's obviously going to be a good draft card. Just like 3/4 textless would be a good draft card. So I just I don't think it's a constructed card. All right, and we got Migs Mayfeld. He's a 2-cost red unit, 2/2 with Underworld. Okay, more Underworld, good. And it has when a player discards a card from the hand, you may deal 2 damage to a unit or a base. You can do this only once a turn. So I did mention earlier when talking about Kylo that there were going to be 2 cards that work well with his ability. This is the second. You can play this. Then Kylo's ability now not only buffs one of your units, it also deals 2 to a unit or base, which is pretty nice. Of course, this guy is only a 2/2 for 2, which is not good stats, right? So it's difficult sometimes to justify that. However, he does come with this, like, especially in a Kylo deck, this like backup plan, right? If they ever lead with a 2 health unit, you can play this and immediately kill it. If they lead with something bigger, what you can do is claim, use Kylo's ability to buff Migs and deal 2 to their base, and then Migs will now be able to trade when they attack into Migs. That's like less exciting, but it does mitigate a little bit of the downside in the sense that he won't just be free food if you buff his attack. I think I would like to squeeze him in. Like, he's not so much a turn 1 play. He's more like a later in the game, like you squeeze this in before you use Kylo's ability on another one of your units. You get some value, like base value out of this. Maybe then you deploy your Kylo. You've now got like a wide board. What are they going to target? Is like MiG's going to be their priority? Is something else? Yeah, that's like where it's interesting. It also has like when a player discards a card from their hand. So, you know, like you can force throw your opponent. They have to discard a card. Then it deals 2. If you play it with other cards like Spark of Rebellion, like other red discard packages, like it can go in hero decks too. So I think mostly though, if I was going to play this, it'd probably only be in Kylo right now. I don't see like wanting to play this and then like Spark next turn, deal 2. Like that seems a little too cute. But overall, I think there's some potential here in a Kylo deck. It being an underworld obviously works well with McClunky as well. So you can like play him, discard a card, deal 2 to something, bounce him back to your hand, deal 3 to something. It's all like pretty interesting. And, you know, cool card. All right, that's what I got today. Guess the video ended up being pretty long anyway because there were like a couple leaders that I thought needed a bunch of words spoken about. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think of these cards. And yeah, hope to catch you soon. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and take care.